Chapter 2. At the corner of Via Macchida, a cafe he knew. Inside, businessmen and executives sat talking at the small tables at the bar. The bartender, his apron untied and hanging loosely, hands working at the coffee machine, stared beyond his customers and out onto the street. The world moved slowly in bright liquid light. He had a cigarette burning in an ashtray. On the back wall, a mirror was angled to reflect the cafe, its tables and customers. In its frame were photographs of the cafe from earlier times, run by older men. The walls were covered in flags, pennants, kit, Palmatern and Italian. On the door, a sun-faded poster of the 2006 Italian World Cup team. The wiring to the strip lighting to an extractor fan lodged in an aperture cut into the glass at the top of the window hung from the ceiling. There was the buzz of electricity, the snapping of an intermittent current. He found space at the bar, elbows down. His fingers at his face felt his unshaven chin. The bartender's eyes flicked to him. Buongiorno, espresso. No, tea per favore. His accent was not good. The tea came in a tall glass, the water steaming, a grey tea bag afloat, a long spoon at an acute angle. He dropped in a sugar cube, watched it bump to the bottom on the stem of the spoon and dissolve slowly in the darkening water. He ordered a pastry. It was coated in the sweetest sugar. The yellow cream inside tasted synthetic, of chemicals. Flakes fell onto his lapels, his shirt front, and stuck. He picked away the flakes that clung to his lips and the corners of his mouth, pushed away the small plate. He bought a packet of cigarettes. He had chosen strong, bitter cigarettes without filters. The smoke was hot and thudded at the back of his throat. He watched the tea stew and go cold. On the street, the sun struck the buildings with hard direct light, turning upper windows into flashing mirrors. Soon, metal would be warm to the touch. By midday, the heat would be such that the tourists on the steps of the cathedral would experience a sudden and dizzying exhaustion, placing hands to their cheeks, their forehead, all reserves of energy drawn out. It would feel like they were on a journey without end, given a presentiment of death. Any breeze at all would be hot and dry, a remnant of the Sirocco, bringing with it red Saharan sand. Palermo would feel like a city sinking into the desert. He was already looking forward to dusk, sudden and long, the sky darkening to a glowing blue-black as if backlit by the stars. It was this time last year, on his way to meet her one afternoon after she finished work, that he had stopped along this wide street to watch the city's football team high up on a long balcony. Their sudden presence had halted traffic. It was like an alien invasion, people out of their cars looking up, shielding their eyes. The young men did little but peer down, laugh to one another, give an occasional wave. Fathers held up their baby sons. Younger men climbing lampposts declaimed in hoarse voices their love. The police did nothing to move the traffic on, disperse the crowd. Instead, they stood by their cars, doors open, hats off, wiping away the sweat from their foreheads with the tops of their shirt sleeves, other hands resting on the handles of their revolvers. It was as if the centre of the city had been mesmerised. He stopped and looked up. He was towards the back, in space, next to an alleyway. A young woman pushed past him in a light summer dress, her long hair down her back like the meander of a river. Then there was a boy in front of him, eyes wide. For a moment Daniel thought he was being asked for money, but after a second the boy found focus and pushed him back into the alley, a knife quickly at his throat, its flashing edge like a glint from far away. The boy was perhaps 15, poor, filthy. As he talked, gold fillings were like dark lights in his mouth. Did he have orders to kill him from the famous professor? 10 metres away, one of the policemen reached inside the car for a loud hailer and passed it to the young woman. She flicked her long hair back in readiness to speak. One by one, she asked all the footballers to marry her. It was said with such lightness and charm, the crowd cooed and urged one to say yes and mean it. In the alley, the boy went quiet, stunned by his own audacity. Then after a pause, a wallet was demanded. Only my wallet? Daniel pressed his neck against the blade. The boy hooked a hand into Daniel's inside pocket, elbow in the air. Withdrawing the wallet, the boy nicked some skin with the tip of his knife. The blood was hot, the trickle thick and slow. Then the boy was off, his run starting with an excited, thrilled skip. From the balcony, a piece of paper floated down. The girl raised her hands in the air, palms open, straining up to catch. First, the floating paper was erratic, like a butterfly, then drifted like a tiny boat on the air and landed in raised hands meters away. It was passed back to the girl. She read it, for a moment distracted and solemn, and then waved her mobile phone at the balcony. Daniel felt at his neck, and then studied the blood on his hands. The alley was just out of view from the cafe. He didn't have strong feelings about the incident. The humiliation had quickly passed. He had been unlucky, that's all. Or should that be lucky? He would be lucky a few days later. There had seemed no reason to go to the police. The bartender made him some fresh tea, which he drank out of politeness, his body temperature soaring. He pulled a napkin from a dispenser and patted away the perspiration on his forehead. She was not in Palermo, he had made sure of this. She was with her husband on the other side of the island, a conference. His wristwatch showed 9 a.m. The wallet from which he drew the money to pay his bill was bought in a shop close by, a few meters away from Corto Canti, chosen by her from a selection of 10. She had moved them around the glass top counter with her palms like tarot cards. He stood by the door watching. Her arms were bare to the shoulder, her neck exposed, her giant curls tied up. She taught him through the details that must be checked for. So at last, Daniel. He wasn't included in the final choice. The euro note was new, almost stiff. The bartender rubbed his thumb across the colour, held it to the window, up to the light. What change was due was not given. The street was busier now. Keen tourists directed themselves to monuments, churches, the city's many crumbling palazzi. Locals in light grey suits, dark ties, sunglasses walked slowly to work, stopping to talk idly to others who looked just like themselves. Traders and chefs, aprons knotted tightly around their waists, carried produce in crates and boxes, over their shoulders sides of meat. He put on his sunglasses, transferred his wallet to his trouser pocket and slung his jacket over his shoulder. To his left, a few meters away, there was the narrow entrance to the Vicaria street market. A line of bright red and ochre canopies propped up on poles gave shade to fruit and vegetables, which in their brightness seemed to possess an inner light. A small motorbike stripped to essentials, seat, engine, handlebars, was parked against the wall. A box for deliveries fixed to the front with bent wire. Salami, other cooked meats hung in windows between bottles of red wine, oils, vinegars. Inside one small shop, stacked along shelves, there were large cans of olive oil, small square tins of fish, cardboard boxes of dried pasta. In another context, it might be construed as an artwork, derivative yet with a bright energy that made you stop, admire. In the doorway, on a small wooden stool, an old man sat smoking a small cigar, directing around him a younger woman serving an old customer, and a boy, hands sticky from the juice of ripe fruit, standing on a box filling the spaces on the shelves. Both the boy and the young woman wore flip-flops. There was a line of grime where the white soles of their feet met dark skin. There was a cash till at the back, old posters of Sicily on the walls. The street itself was on a slight slope and curved downwards. At the bottom there was a small piazza flooded with sunlight. Just beyond the entrance, a large stone font was filled by water dribbling from the small grey faces of gargoyles. The grey stone was worn, rough, the work had never been delicate. In the centre of the piazza, a tall thin man in jeans and a white vest, his long muscles distinguishable from his slender bones like an anatomist's drawing, was standing behind a shallow bowl cut from an oil drum. The brightness of the sunlight blanched the greenish colour of cheap olive oil and the pink of young red wine stained on his vest. On his shoulders, long, thick, dark hair grew like the epaulets of warriors. His head was shaven, yet the shape of his black hair was distinct, as though stencilled, and came down low on his forehead. Around his wrists and his neck, flat-linked gold jewellery hung. He was like a mechanic, a man happy to work on the street in the heat. As he moved, he pulled at the waist of his jeans to keep them from falling off his narrow hips. His face was drawn, his cheekbones high. Under his eyes, the skin was grey. Beneath the oil drum was a white canister, a rubber tube feeding gas to an iron grate where 4 flames issued out singly, becoming a cradle of orange under the drum. To one side, a large black bucket was brimming with green flashing water, the surface broken with pink and white shapes turning and sloshing about. Every now and then, a pale pink tentacle flipped over the side. With a long fork, the man pricked a small octopus out of the bucket and jabbed it towards the oil can, releasing it into the hot oil. He stood away on impact, the oil spitting in high arcs. When drops of oil hit his chest, he rubbed away the burning with the heel of his hand. Then, with quick cuts from long knives in each hand, the octopus was hacked into small pieces. A wide spatula was used to press the flesh to sear it against the hot metal. Within a minute, the pieces were gathered up and shuffled onto the spatula and tipped into small polystyrene containers lined up along a ledge at the front of the pan. Customers appeared from shops, stalls, from reading papers on benches, leaning against the crumbling walls. At the side of the pan there was a bottle of densely silted chili oil, a large jar of night dark caponata, long spoons dug in. Mouthfuls were taken tentatively, sucking in air to cool the food down, to let the heat out. The man with the octopuses displayed no surprise when he saw Daniel. Setting down his knife and spatula, he turned off the gas and stepped away from the oil drum. Signor Daniel, buongiorno, come sta, my friend? Come sta, Giacomo. Their greeting was warm, a kiss on each cheek, hands clutching elbows, upper arms. Giacomo studied his face, ducking down, bobbing from side to side, wanting to take all of him in. You have come back. How long are you here for? A day. Giacomo pantomimed sadness and returned to his pan, an unlit cigarette between his lips. He used a transparent blue lighter to ignite the gas in his cigarette. The oil was quickly spitting hot and an octopus forked in. Daniel backed away. Giacomo wiped his hands on his vest before picking up his knives. You are here to write about the Lippi trial. No, I am here only today. The round shape of the pan meant only the tips of the knives could cut at the octopus's tentacles, and Giacomo pushed his elbows up and out like a surgeon working with long instruments. You are going to see the Rossini? He laughed. They were not playing a guessing game. No, not the Rossini. The small polystyrene containers were full. Giacomo picked up 2 and handed one to him. Hot. Some men like gossip, like the traffic of gossip, and when they do, they position themselves, usually as taxi drivers, as market traders, amid the flow of others' lives. And in a city of talk, of rumour, of the candour of heavy silence, to be a gossip in Palermo is to be happy and know your business will thrive. From a dark green plastic crate at his feet, Giacomo produced a small glass jug of red wine, pink in the light, thick sediment at the bottom. Daniel declined the offer. I would no more not drink at this time in the morning than not drink at this time at night. It is not what I hear. Palermo and Naples, once the kingdom of 2 Sicilies. Giacomo poured himself a small amount, drank it back, wiped his mouth with his wrist. He would work through the day and into the night, oil and wine patterning his clothes. The piece of octopus Daniel picked out with tentative fingers was firm, the flavour strong, sweet, of the sea. There was an empty bench in shade and they sat down. Giacomo crossed his legs and balanced the polystyrene container on his knee. Before them there was a large old building, its front wall missing, the derelict interior open like the set of a theatre. Where sheltered from the sun and the rain, the wallpaper had remained clean, bright, its pattern as clear as if in a showroom. In places where it had been accessible, it had been ripped down from the ceiling in long tears, leaving the shapes of white stalactites. Graffiti had been created as high up as was possible, a symbol of prowess, courage in dangerous places. There were political messages, anti-mafia slogans, attempts at art. A Homer Simpson. The brightness of the wallpaper suggested the collapse was recent, yet the buildings had been like this for decades. Timber scaffolding kept the walls up. Tourists presumed these were the buildings that had not been rebuilt since bomb damage during the Second World War, but they were in another part of the city. You are not going to tell me why you are here? Giacomo gave permission to a young couple to take pots of octopus. He waved away their money. I'm going to the Oratorio di San Lorenzo. Giacomo nodded, popped a piece of octopus in his mouth. Because of the dead policeman in Naples. The Caravaggio is now very famous in the UK. It has always been famous in Italy, in Palermo. He paused. How is Naples? Like here? Quiet? It will not be quiet here for long. The trial is about to begin. They will work through August. Imagine, Palermo in August. Well, you know, yes. It is a year ago. Yes. It is why you are here. For a moment there was a rush of terrible light, and he felt blinded. He saw himself staggering, a bullet in his shoulder, the blood arterial, dark on the paving. Giovanna at his hotel that first morning, then later that afternoon, slipping her dress off her shoulder, its accordion crumple at her feet. He was close to where they used to walk together, pretending they were risking their lives. She had once said, with a finger to her lips, "Good men die in Palermo." He denied being a good man. The light faded. He shook his head and patted Giacomo's knee. I'm here for a day, that is all. He stood. Grazie, Giacomo. It has been good to see you. Giacomo tossed a piece of octopus high in the air and let it drop into his open mouth. Daniel stood, crumbled the polystyrene pot and placed it in Giacomo's bin. Ciao, maybe I'll see you later. He went to walk away. Signor Sean? He stopped and took in a breath. What did he expect from this man? He didn't turn around, just raised his hand to indicate he was leaving. But Giacomo was quickly behind him, feet silent across the worn stone, an arm around his chest. The whisper in his ear was good-natured, his grip firm. Do not lie to yourself, my friend. You are not here for the Caravaggio, a dead policeman. There was wine and olive oil on his breath, paraffin on his hands. She is in Siracusa. No. Palermo has the light of heaven. You are wrong. He waited until the hold was lightened and then pulled away. He heard laughter. The English do not understand fate. There was a small plosive sound as the gas reignited.